Welcome everyone to a new episode of On the Rise. I am Vishal Yathish, a junior at Mission San Jose High School. What drives successful people? What does passion truly mean? And how does one find it? This is what we're going to find out together. On the Rise features top-tier founders and innovators to talk about their journeys and motivations to help inspire the next generation of leaders. Today, we're joined by Kavya Kopparapu. Kavya is a senior at Harvard University studying technology and healthcare innovation with an advanced standing master's in computer science. Kavya has worked in the intersection of artificial intelligence and healthcare in areas such as accessible diagnosis, precision medicine, and resource allocation. Her projects earned her one of Time's most influential teens, WebMD's Health Heroes, and Glamour magazine's College Woman of the Year. She has a patent on a precision medicine platform for glioblastoma, with another patent on the way for an AI system to summarize user-generated videos. Okay, that's a lot. Kavya, thanks again for joining us today. I know you have an incredibly busy schedule, so let's dive right in. So what motivated or inspired you to use artificial intelligence to create solutions in medicine?
Yeah, so I've always been someone who's really passionate about making a difference in the lives of people, whether that be through medicine, through computer science, through activism, or any way, on any scale that I could help or use any of my training or background in order to make a difference. And so I've always really been interested in healthcare and medicine as kind of the system of how humans are helping other humans and how we understand more about our bodies and specifically how we fix problems with our bodies. And so I've been following a lot of healthcare innovations and advancements in medicine from both a therapeutic lens and also from a diagnosis lens. And so when I first started this project, glioblastoma had caught my eye as a disease that had a very high mortality rate, and a lot of really interesting research on the drug discovery side and the treatment side, but not a lot on the actual diagnosis side and how we can catch this disease earlier so that we can better treat patients and help them get better faster. And so I think that's just I guess one example of my passion for healthcare and healthcare technology. And I think the biggest reason that I'm really interested in this intersection is that there's such a fascinating group of people who are also interested in this grouping of different topics, because it really involves an interest in technology, computer science, an interest in healthcare medicine, but also just an interest in public policy, how the world works, the different incentives and structures that are enabling innovation. And so I think this area is just so fascinating because it gives you a lens not only onto two very academic subjects, but also just generally into what's going on in the world and how are people banding together to fix really large scale problems that affect a lot of people.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So you talked about this a little bit more because I'm going to ask you, can you elaborate a little bit more on GlioVision and your patent for diagnosing glioblastoma?
Yeah. So yeah, I had read about a couple influential people being diagnosed with glioblastoma, and just was really interested on the diagnosis side of this problem. I felt like technology had a really big role to play in making this diagnosis more accessible. So shortening the time it takes for patients to get a diagnosis, potentially having a more early diagnosis of the problem, and just making it cheaper overall. So instead of having a lot of manual biological processes, being able to automate that using artificial intelligence and computer science. So that was kind of the inspiration for GlioVision and why I felt like technology in particular, my technology background would be really helpful.
So you also have another patent currently in progress. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So this patent was actually from a summer that I had spent at Snapchat. So I was working on the media deployment team, and their job is to ensure that any of the content that's hosted on the Snapchat platform is efficiently produced and then maintained. And obviously coming from a machine learning background, I was really interested specifically in how can we encourage users to better interact with the content that is most interesting to them, and also just be able to understand the gist of something that they are able to view before you actually like watch the entire video. And so I basically proposed this project, which was right now, if like Snapchat videos, the first frame, like the cover frame of the video is just the first frame, which is not really helpful to tell you like what's actually in the video, what's actually happening, and like summarizing the interesting parts of the video or like what makes a video pop. And so essentially the system that I had developed over the course of a summer was to summarize the video in a single frame. So to automatically pick out what is the most interesting looking frame that summarizes the video the best. And so like using this, we were able to create a patent audit because that hasn't really been done for like these short form user generated videos before. They've really been done for longer videos, like think YouTube videos that are like more than like 10 minutes long. So it's like fundamentally a very different problem. So we were able to like get a patent on it, which is really cool.
And I think for those longer YouTube videos, they mostly summarize it in text form rather than a frame.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you're working on a lot of amazing initiatives at the same time, along with school at Harvard University. Did you ever fear that you would not be able to accomplish any of your set goals? And this goes for your earlier projects as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think so I think I feel like in whatever field I'm in, I always feel like a beginner because I've always been the type of person who just loves to know about everything. So when I first like expanded into artificial intelligence, I felt like my niche was actually more on like the biology, like health and medicine side. And so expanding into AI for me was like very new. Like there were obviously people who had been already studying it for a couple of years. And so they were, quote, in some ways a lot more ahead than me, had a lot more background than me, and that was intimidating, right? And I think even in like some of these different projects that I work on, like when I expand outside of like this like health and medicine like niche that I've created, when I like take classes outside of honestly like STEM in general, it's like stepping into new territory, which I don't know a lot about. But I actually really enjoy that feeling. I love being a student. And so I feel like one of the things that I feel like I've been able to do really well is embracing like that sense of uncertainty where you don't know if the thing that you're about to embark on is going to work out. You don't know if you're going to be good at it. You don't know if it's something that you like to do. But I think it's definitely something that just like people in general should try a little bit more to like put yourself out there in areas that you don't really know what's going to happen. I think a lot of the points that you touched on highlight a lot of the things that have worked out really well for me. There have been a lot of things that haven't worked out well for me. And I think people tend to forget that those things do exist, and that like anyone who you see as like successful on paper or has accomplished a lot on paper has had a really long journey to get there. Like for me, for example, like I thought there was a period in time in high school that I thought I was going to be a professional lacrosse player. And I spent a lot of time from like age 8 to age like 15 playing lacrosse. And like that was my aim and that was my goal. It wasn't really like an academic goal that I had set out for myself. And then I had a series of sports injuries and like that didn't end up panning out, but like everything that I do now was a pivot. So like nothing that I do right now was necessarily planned or something that I thought that I was going to do from the beginning. So yeah, I think there's definitely been a lot of things that haven't worked out and definitely a lot of change along the way, but I feel like it's all about like how you handle it and how you like move on from the situations that haven't worked.
Hmm. As a follow-on, how did you balance your time between all of your different initiatives, like your research projects as well as your nonprofit, which we'll cover a little bit later?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of down to what gives you the most energy and at what points of the day. So for me, I try to devote like a certain number of hours a week, like obviously to school and then to my research and then to my nonprofit and then just to like learning more like in reading and like understanding more about some topics that I don't know a lot about. You know, some time I spend like listening to podcasts, like hanging out with my friends, like just having some like downtime, like leisure, like talking to my family. Like I think the key to like prioritization is really making sure that you understand like what things and what parts of your life that you really value and how much time you actually want to allocate to them. And I Google Calendar very aggressively. So like like my friends will make fun of me for it because any activity that I will do is documented in my Google Calendar. So like I'll get dinner with someone, I'll send them a Google Calendar invite. Like if I have meetings for like my nonprofit, like there will always be calendar invites circulating. And it's just a way to respect other people's time, but also to respect your own time. So that at the end of the week, you can go back and like look at the colors on your Google Calendar and be like, did I prioritize the time this week the way that I felt like I should have been prioritizing my time? And then you can dynamically shift it for the next week.
So we talked about this a little bit before the podcast. So what would be your recommendation for students such as myself who are interested in machine learning to develop their knowledge and skill in terms of resources or a different approach to learning?
Yeah, for sure. So I think right now there's a lot of resources available. I'm super jealous because when I was learning about machine learning, there honestly wasn't as many resources as there are right now. So I think the first step is like what you mentioned, like before when we were talking, which is finding like some lectures or some academic source that you can learn some of the theory behind machine learning, because I think too often a lot of machine learning just becomes a couple calls to a really expansive library, but you don't really know what's going on. So I think, like, for example, it's really easy to abstract away the entirety of machine learning to like model.fit. But really, it's really helpful for you if you like want to continue and like work on this area more and actually contribute to the knowledge base that is happening and developing in the field to like really understand what's going on behind that model.fit. And so I think coming from a little bit more of an academic standpoint, so whether that be like a Coursera course or finding a university online that has like their materials and their lectures online and like going through that. Or a lot of like different organizations, like mine included, have like intro to machine learning, like workshops, things like that. Attending one of those, I feel like is the best way to begin learning. And then to like expand on your knowledge, like 100% should be project based. So like that's how I learned and how I built my knowledge before I had a more formal like schooling in machine learning, like when I got to college. So like find an area that you think is really interesting. Use websites such as kaggle.com or like different databases that are available for machine learning, and pick like a data set, pick like a source of ground truth, and just like work on a really interesting project. It doesn't have to be something completely new, but it just has to be something new to you and interesting to you.
And thinking about the future of AI and like students delving into that field, what applications of artificial intelligence, in your opinion, do you think will see the most traction and will see the most growth in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think number one, I think like the application of machine learning into a lot of areas that historically have not been automated. So I'm not talking like driverless cars because that's something that we've all kind of seen coming. I think more things like automating very manual processes in like in industries such as oil and gas, in like insurance and banking. I think a lot of industries that historically use human power as a ground truth and have been doing so for the past like many years, I think is definitely one area that automation and machine learning is going to make a really big difference. Um, I think also there's going to be a greater emphasis on how machine learning systems interact with each other, and this is kind of the focus of like the research that I'm getting into right now. So like, how do humans interact with AI systems in the real world? How do AI systems interact with other AI systems in the real world? I think like these two sets of questions like span a lot of different areas of AI. So not only just like applied AI, but also like human computer interaction and multi-agent systems and like even robotics for like the tactile part of interacting with the world. And so I think we're definitely going to see a lot more traction in these areas as well. Um, and then finally, like not to be biased by my own research interests, but I definitely think like AI intersecting into medicine is definitely something that I've seen grow in the past couple of years. And I definitely see it continuing to grow, especially with the digitization of a lot of like medical records, a lot of medical information, and ongoing shifts to privacy laws and privacy policy that accommodates for some of this data becoming more accessible to like machine learning systems. I think we're definitely going to see a really big shift in that area as well.
Cool. That's really interesting. Even with all of your innovations and accolades, you still found the time to give back to your community. So Girls Computing League is a nonprofit that you founded and have been running with great success for several years now. So what's next for your organization?
Yeah, so over the past year, we've been putting together this program that I'm really excited about, which is called the Thousand Schools Program. So the roots of my organization, I guess, like for context, is really based under like groups of students who are really passionate about computer science, going to underprivileged schools like Title I schools, public housing districts, and empowering young girls and students generally to become more interested in computer science by tying it to things that they're already really interested in or things that they interact with in the real world. And I think the really empowering part of that is that you get to have like this one-on-one interaction with students who are really interested in computer science, but may not know how to take the next step or may not even know that they're interested in STEM generally. But I think the thing that has always made me feel like there's something that needs to shift here is that it's really not scalable, right? Like having each organization going to different schools and having singular workshops without continuity of like mentorship and support is something that's always bothered me and something that I've always like hoped that we would be able to fix. So this new initiative that we're working on ties in together a chapter leaders program, which is we have like high school leaders from like 17 different states in the US and a couple different countries like Bolivia and Japan working together in their local communities and also with college students who we are funding through a scholarship program that was funded through the American Association for the Advancement of Science to develop curriculum around emerging technology and specifically for more of a discussion basis. So like critically engaging with topics such as like, what is the impact of like driverless cars in like the future of society? And what does crypto actually mean for me? And how does like cybersecurity work in a high level? And like really providing that entry level to get students interested into computer science who really didn't have a background in it before. And to provide like more constant mentorship and like creation of a community that didn't really exist before. So I'm really excited about it. I think it like leverages a lot of the things that we built over the past like 5 years and a lot of the expertise and like the connections that we've been able to like amass. So I think that's like the big thing that's coming next. And so we have a good group of like corporate partners that we're really excited to work with on this initiative. So yeah, definitely stay tuned.
On a similar note, you're completing your final year at Harvard University, I believe this coming June. So what is next for your journey? Like, are you considering like career opportunities or creating a new organization or yeah, what's next for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something that I still haven't figured out. As I mentioned, I'm kind of a planner, but also kind of a go with the flow person. And I think a lot of my planning comes in like a more day-to-day, week-to-week. But I've realized like in the more long term, like when I see where am I going, like what am I doing, like what is the type of impact I want to be having, I think it's something that you can't plan out. Like if I had made a decision at the beginning of when I joined like Harvard, like what I would be doing when I graduated, like I would be pre-med and being a doctor, which is like very different than the idea I have for like myself and my career right now and the impact that I want to have. And so I'm not sure. I think what I ideally would like to be doing is like working on my own company, my own organization, hopefully at the intersection of medicine and artificial intelligence. That's always been my goal. I feel like the greatest impact I could have is always creating organizations, setting the culture that you want for those organizations and like the impact. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping I will be doing in a year. But that's always subject to change. So maybe I'll go to grad school. Maybe I'll continue some of like the AI research that I've been doing at a different company. So we'll see.
So yeah, thank you, Kavya. So to close this out, one final question. If you had to give one piece of advice to aspiring innovators and scientists, what would that be?
Yeah, it's a piece of advice that my mom always gave me, which is like the worst thing that someone can say is no, which means you should always put yourself out there. And I think a lot of the opportunities that I've gotten and like who have made me who I am right now is because I cold emailed people to like get access to their expertise or their mentorship or like to access to opportunities that weren't available for someone at my tenure, my age. And so I would say like always put yourself out there, even when like you may not fit like the job description or like the requirements for a program, or even like the notion of what someone in a specific field looks like. I think a lot of people are really excited to be mentors and really excited to help out someone who they see themselves in. And so that means you should take full advantage of like being young, like being really interested in a topic, being a newcomer, and like really make sure to like put yourself out there, because you don't know like what are the types of opportunities that you would get. You definitely know that you're not going to get those opportunities if you don't reach out and don't put yourself out there.
Thank you so much, Kavya, for your time. Thanks everyone for joining us. Stay tuned for my next episode. See you all soon. Bye.